Yes, yeah, what's any questions?
So do you envision it, like in the sort of the final production, as a reading, or as, you know, in bathroom stalls and writing and?
Right. No, the final production that we are working towards would be on an actual stage in an actual theater, where we would be able to have a larger collaboration with the whole team, like the set designers, a director, all of us working together, costumers, makeup artists. So yeah, this is just part of the process. So your comments today, your questions, the comments that the readers and the dancers have had, and the insights have really already shaped this, like reshaped this in the last week. So yeah. Miha.
Cindy, would you ever consider presenting it at a salsa club?
Huh.
Sure.
I mean, really, because
Yes.
you know, as we know, theater is anomalous, right? I mean, it's one of those institutions that
Right.
separates the
Right.
audience from the performance and the actors.
I finally wanted that separation.
Aye.
Just kidding. But no, a salsa club would be fabulous because it's already got the set, right?
Right.
But yeah,
And
definitely.
there are salsa clubs, as you promised to take me there. You know,
Yes.
I do remember this.
Okay, we just
So-
need funding to get out to LA, and we will go on the tour.
Okay.
El Reino de la Salsa, stop number 1.
Mhm.
It's an alias, though, for a particular club in the research, so I would have to kill you after.
So it's a possibility that you would do that.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It's a possibility that you would consider doing that.
I would, what do you think? Sorry, what you would like to do with a salsa club? I would consider that, definitely.
I'll do it anywhere where they'll produce it. Sorry.
Anywhere where they
If
will
somebody's
produce
gonna produce it in the bathroom, I will do it.
it. There might only be room for a couple of people to watch that with this giant, because it's a giant cast, so.
We do have a live band in the play.
Yeah, there is a live band in the play. We're not quite sure how that's, we need a lot of funding. The other,
Yeah, how do you envision casting in terms of racial diversity?
good question. Like for this, this round, well, we did it 8 years ago, or 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and we really encouraged as many Latino students and Latinos in the LA community, or where are we? Minneapolis community, to join us. But for now, like in these staged readings, like I would still encourage that, but anyone who is interested in this subject matter, I was very interested in having participate. I don't know, Lucy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a broad ask, you know, I mean, if, it depends on who walks in, if somebody's interested in, like, who's a salsa dancer, who is interested in exploring, you know, theater and they can speak, that's good.
Yeah.
And, you know, actors who have background in movement.
Yeah, and especially like people who have experienced migration and the disorientation of that, I think are also, like they have had nice commentary, like in this process that would, you know, this process that we've been going through. So-
And I knew you were asking about racially, like how we thought about actors. Some of them are identified racially here as whatever, but not all here, so it's open. You know, and it could be all kinds of, you know, just not just racially, but in terms of gender identity, it could be, that's open, and that's actually something that we want in the script. Where we write that, you know, we require whoever produces this to cast as broadly as you can.
Ami?
So the question of whether you would consider producing it in a salsa club kind of raises the question of like who's your intended audience? How, you know, like how do you envision reactions of the audience to the play? And I'm just wondering about your thoughts, because it has, you know, it has parodic elements and it has a very sort of critique, right, stance. So yeah.
Do you want to address that one at all?
I can take a few more comments.
okay, well, let's hold on to that and add, are there other comments to go? Like, I want to maybe get a few.
Mine is a separate question. I was interested in Guadalupe and Guadalupe,
Yeah.
your choice of naming those characters with those names. Are they mirrors?
Okay.
Could you talk about that?
Yeah, okay, so I feel like that question actually plays into your question, because Guadalupe and Guadalupe are actually, they're figures that are important, like, for example, in Chicana feminism, or, so you have Our Lady of Guadalupe, who the character of Guadalupe is based on, and we have Guadalupe, who was an Aztec goddess, that when the Spaniards came, they superimposed Guadalupe over Guadalupe and created one, as they brought Catholicism in, right? And then they split them apart and they created the Virgin Whore binary, right? So that like will not leave us still. So they became two separate figures, two separate, where one was always worshipped and put on a pedestal as Guadalupe, and the other was not worshipped as the whore, and was just degraded and defiled. And so those two, like historically and mythologically, have this relationship. I would say, like, Chicana feminists have written about some of that, like that binary. And so in the play, so if you know that, if you know those histories, then you know that you have a background to connect. But if you don't know those histories, where you can just pick up on the story. These are two figures that you find out they were separated over 500 years ago. They felt betrayed by each other. They felt abandoned at colonization. Because they weren't able to stay together. One didn't rescue the other from the pedestal. One didn't rescue the other from the Spaniards who were after her, and she was driven away. So they have completely different histories of migration. Guadalupe roamed northward and then was in what became, it was Mexico, but it became the southern United States, right? So, and Guadalupe, so she became a US citizen by default, as the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo came in 1848 and made that territory U.S. territory, right? But Guadalupe, in my story, so now this becomes my story, right? So Guadalupe is an undocumented immigrant who came in the 90s, and she uses LA salsa to disguise her status. So it's not necessarily known, but like if you know those histories, I think you can latch into the story of it more easily. And if you don't, I wonder, like I want people who don't know those histories, I want the story to still be relevant. So I'm curious, like, if you want to let me know later, like, what do you get? What does it make sense to you? Is it relevant to you, even if you don't know certain aspects of the history? So, but I would hope that a broad audience would be interested. So,
Is that something you considered making, not necessarily didactic, but, for example, the description that you offered of that kind of coupling and uncoupling and their relationships, to me, I imagine that almost choreographically.
yeah.
And is there a way of introducing these characters through a choreographic moment? Yeah, where we come to understand their relationship. We don't need to know the specific history, but we understand the way that they are related to each other, and that's also something that potentially costuming can signal in terms of what they're borrowing and adapting, and differentiating themselves from each other. So maybe there's some space for that more lyrical exploration.
Yeah, there's actually a whole scene in the bathroom where they come to recognize each other as they're both looking into the mirror at their own reflections, but then they're looking at each other, and because they haven't seen each other for over 500 years, and so at first when Guadalupe is giving Guadalupe the lesson in the club, the LA salsa lesson, they don't recognize each other at all until, like, it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's something familiar, like I'm looking in your eyes, I know those eyes, like I know, and so then there is a choreography that is going to work that out, so I'm glad to hear that you think that's a good idea.
So also something that, we actually talked about like 2 months ago when we started working the last version of the script, that, because we're interested in not just kind of being very, like, oh, this is their relationship. It's very clear that they're twins, or they used to be one people. So we're interested in like kind of suggesting multiple kinds of relationships for the two. And I suggested something, maybe we don't have to script, maybe it's in the choreography that we have to just find that in there. Yeah, so that's really good to hear and helpful to hear.
Melissa?
Hi. Have you considered having the third Lupe, the Queen of Soul, who was also at least oral, her presence? 'Cause it made me think how she also was considered inappropriate. Like for many, she wasn't dancing right, she wasn't singing right. So the fact that is one of the discussions there, this contest about authenticity in dancing and who really has it.
Yes.
That presence would be there in image when sound.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard them referring to La Lupe in
No,
the
I
play.
didn't get that.
She was out there dancing that old Rumba style, and Jimmy, one of the characters, was like making fun of her and disparaging her style. And so there's actually a whole racist
I
thing
think I
going
heard
on.
it, but I thought I didn't make that
Yeah,
connection.
so there's a lot going on. But La Lupe really takes over. Like, she's sort of present, but also erased a little in the first half. And in the second half, she really takes over, and she wants to create a different presence in her history, because her Queen of Soul is so erased, whereas Celia Cruz, the Queen of
Yeah.
Salsa, she's so prevalent. So that's why we had a couple of Celia Cruz songs in our choreography, whereas La Lupe's songs don't come until the very, very end of the play. But yes, we are playing with the third Lupe in this, Guadalupe, Guadalupe, and La Lupe, and they're different histories of being Latina. And they're differently racialized histories as well, and different stories of migration. So, yeah.
I read the whole play, so does it ever leave this salsa dance place and go to the immigrant salsa dance place, or does it all stay?
It all stays in this club. What's about to happen is that there's going to be an audition for a video that will be filmed there tonight. So they have an audition, they're competing, then the video happens and La Lupe takes over. And so it's this long night. There might be stories of other places, but they would emerge on the bathroom wall. So there are references to it.
I want to go back to our audience question. I wonder, because we get asked that question often, and like I worked for a theater company for so long. Like that audience, like having, and also as a writer, like I don't think about, I want these, I want everybody to read. I want anybody who can sit there in that seat to see this play. Like as opposed to, kind of, and like I said, I work in a theater, so the idea of a targeted or primary audience is very, something very familiar to me. So I think it would just, whatever the theater company, whoever produces this, and how they would think of it in their season, their slot. But I think it really can bring in multiple audiences, like Cindy said, people who like salsa music, people who are interested in, if they're, salsa community, Latino community broadly, the play, I guess, or migrant communities, because of the themes of the play engage to that. So I think there are many ways to come at it. And like I said, hopefully anybody who can come to see live theater, that they'll make it. have, you know, when you write, you have a specific audience in mind?
I actually don't. But I was wondering if any of the dancers or readers had any comments, like that you observed while dancing. This is the first time we were able to put the choreography, like experiment with it, and some of you, I said, you know, no experience necessary. So how many of you had never danced salsa before as dancers? Okay, so some of you had never danced salsa. So learning the rhythm, figuring out. So we did a lot of things about what are your perceptions of salsa. So the first thing we did was put on salsa and dance what you think it is. And so one of the things about the choreography was trying to. It's called Salsa Not Salsa. That first one where it's this alienating thing. You walk in and you're like, oh, salsa. I've always danced salsa where I'm from. I come here. It kind of looks like salsa, but it's also not salsa. And so there's this distancing. So I wasn't trying to create like, okay, everybody, we're all gonna do these steps together and learn this proper technique. I wanted to have different perceptions of salsa in play so that you as an audience might be like, oh, wait, is that salsa? Or that's not really salsa. So we had bird moves going on. We had these gestures from like salsa as we were trying to outdo each other. So that was one of the things I wanted to kind of create that for the audience. Like, it's not quite, is that really salsa? But it is, right? They're dancing to salsa music. That's one of the things that we were working with, and I don't know if the dancers want to talk about that.
David has his hand up.
David.
I was saying, it was interesting. We learned a lot in the process of the rehearsals that we had, and I think the really big challenge and one of the more interesting parts of it was that we weren't coupling at all. So there was this really strong impulse to couple and to partner heterosexually, and so it was really destabilizing to approach this dance as a collective kind of thing without partnering. So, yeah, we really want to talk about that.
Yeah, but you partnered, there would be like partnerships, but not physical partnerships, so it was like this social body where they would change partners, dance alone, dance with kind of everybody except Guadalupe, who couldn't get in there and felt really alienated but was desperate to join. There were moments of trying to outdo each other, so taking a gesture, and if you were dancing and you saw somebody do one of these gestures that you liked, then you pick it up and you try to, so somebody might do this, and then somebody's like, oh, I can do it better. There's the choreography, the instructions are like, pick up somebody's gesture and outdo them. Because to get some of the competition, because it's a social thing, but there's also this underlying, I must outdo and I want to belong, but I want to be up on the hierarchy as well. So it's to try to bring in that tension. It's not just fun and games at the salsa club. There's a lot underlying, a lot of structure. And so we had dancing on a grid, where you might have these wild gestures, but it's all in this grid that it's not just a free-for-all, right? So we were working with a lot of things, and Susanna?
Did you talk about dancing down the line too?
We didn't actually, in our rehearsals, we didn't.
Too complicated for us.
Yeah, no. I think everyone was pretty much on the one.
And we're grateful for that.
Yeah.
I don't know what time it is, but
How many salsa dancers did you have a chance to speak to actually in your field work?
in my field work in 1999 to 2005.
And you would just go to the club and just speak to them? Or?
I went to the club, and I would say as a dance ethnographer, I would sometimes speak to them, but part of my work is dancing with people. No, actually, there's a kinesthetic thing going on. Like I wrote field notes about my dance partnerships that were not spoken. So you're dancing with somebody, and you're doing something wrong, and you're the follower, and I can just,
Yeah.
I can, like, you feel my
Physically,
pressure,
yeah.
I physically am like, nope,
Yeah.
I'm right, this is where you're supposed to be, and it's like, so you can get corrected. But dance ethnography, as I am, and as I practice it, is not about like interviewing people. I mean, yes, you can, and you speak to people, but I am very interested in observing how people are interacting and perceiving. If we're on the sidelines and we're watching the action, how do you perceive this? How do you perceive all these people who don't get asked to dance? Why do you think no one's asking them to dance? Who's a good dancer? These are things I wanted to know. But really it was, somebody asked you to dance and you said no, but then you accepted somebody else's invitation right after. Was it the gold chain that you didn't like? Was it the tonic in the hair? Like, I observed so closely these physical interactions, probably as much as I rely on the verbal. Yeah. So, but I feel like even like the pressure, even the way, like how it feels to me, like I would get panicked when I would be walking in a club by myself, like unaccompanied, like, you know, I know like it's culturally, like women don't walk. I felt like I was, like I can, but it's like I can do this and I'm fine. No one's really gonna care after I leave. But I'm a part of a different community now but I felt like I was flaunting, like some women are really observing other cultural rules, and I felt like I was being very rude and disrespectful when I would do certain things that it won't affect my life negatively if I break certain rules. Yeah.
Did you run into the same group? I have a very good friend who's an avid salsa dancer in Los Angeles. And she says there's a definite group, and they're well known. And there's a certain caliber, she says.
There is a caliber.
And those are the ones here in that group that you sort of tend to see the same people, and then newcomers come about.
I would
It's
go
very
to
interesting
many
to talk.
different clubs and sometimes observe the overlapping, some overlapping people, but I would go to different clubs based on class or part of the city or more racialized part. And so sometimes I would see completely different high caliber dancers. So, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Wonderful.
Any other comments, or it seems like it might be time to go? I'm
It's
getting
a problem in the fall when it gets.
I can't tell what time it is. If there's any other questions, we'll take them, but please come talk to us, and thank you so much for